Welcome to Also Consider This, the podcast where we value nuance, perspective, and knowledge so that we can all be.
Also clever thinkers.
I am the second most famous Alastair on the podcasting scene.
And I'm Guo Feng.
So, did you travel to JB over the weekend or something?
Not over the weekend, but the last I've been to JB was in September during the school holidays with some friends and
okay.
their kids. So it's a good time to get away and then be able to, spend the strong currency over there.
Okay. Now, my impression was that your last trip was a bit more recent than September. Anyways, yeah. So, how do you travel to JB? Because I have not been to JB for a really long time.
So basically the standard Singaporean way lah, which is you take the public bus, the public bus, then you cross the causeway, get down the bus, scan your passport, go down again, then take the CW after that. So
okay.
through the Woodlands interchange, then you take the public bus over lah. Then after that you can still change to another bus after you've gone through immigration.
Yeah,
but it is not the most elegant solution compared to a few other times where we managed to get train tickets. So we take the KTM over. The KTM quite convenient lah. You do your border crossing twice, then everything is just a 5-minute rolling stock all the way to.
Yes, it's true lah. I mean, it's actually one of the busiest crossings in the world, but yet it's so unelegant to get across, right?
Yeah, hopefully with the what's that thing called?
The RTS.
RTS, yes, the RTS. Hopefully by next year, it could potentially alleviate some of our problems lah.
Yes, because I think the biggest one that I hope it will solve is the level of danger that a lot of people when they cross by foot. That one is actually very dangerous. Because the newest version of the JB checkpoint complex, right? They didn't really design it with people walking across in mind. If you remember, in the early 2000s or 1990s, people can just walk across into the old checkpoint.
I've never seen the old checkpoint because that time I didn't really.
Yeah, so the old checkpoint it's just a single story building. It was not like this giant complex that looks like a shopping mall and all that, right? So people could easily walk across and get their passport stamped. These days, if you look carefully, the second link doesn't have allowance for people to walk across because it's also so far lah. And then on the current setup for the causeway, the footpath ends when the causeway bridge ends. So once you get to the other side, the Malaysian side, you have to you have to cross the road and walk onto the ways where cars are going also.
Yeah, I remember seeing on the bus, then you see people have to cut across, then it looks quite dangerous lah.
Yeah, it's actually quite dangerous. It's not a very elegant solution. Yeah.
And I think the long-standing thing also is that one day I would hope to cross the border through a bike lah.
Through a bicycle.
Bicycle lah. But I mean that one.
I can't even get to Woodlands now on bicycle without imagining. Yeah. So, but anyways, it is. I was checking it out lah, and it is the world's busiest border crossing.
I think it is.
Yes,
by Guinness or some standard, it was
the most unreliable source that I have. Right, that is a source lah, but it's very unreliable. Is Wikipedia. So the biggest border crossings are actually all
land borders.
All land borders. I talk about land borders here.
Yeah.
So they are all China and Macau, mainland China and Macau, mainland China and Hong Kong.
So places with quite a lot of economic activity where people
technically the same country even.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the only other one that's so big is the US-Mexico border, one of the US-Mexico checkpoints.
Yep.
The elegant topic of today is cross-border private hire vehicles. A great way to cross the border. Yeah, so because we had recently in the news, private hire vehicles, private transport across the border between Singapore and Malaysia has been quite a big topic. It has sparked a lot of controversy. It has sparked a lot of conflict between people on the roads in Singapore. In particular, it has really angered a lot of people in the private hire vehicle industry, both on the Malaysian side in Johor as well as in Singapore. Right? So we just want to have a look at this problem. We feel that, or at least I feel that this problem is not so straightforward. There are multiple layers of problems and causes to this problem. Um, because it really looks simple on the surface, right? I just want to get across the bridge. I want to go there in as comfortable and you want to go across the border in a comfortable way.
And the most fuss-free way possible lah.
Yes, and therefore, like it seems like it's an easy thing to solve, but there are many layers that I feel that that causes this conflict to happen. And when people get upset or angry about it, it's also partly because of a lack of understanding or a lack of clarity on what some other people are facing. The options to cross are generally private, like what we call public transportation methods, right?
Yeah, you either get through buses, or you have to go through train, which is not easy to get a ticket, because I think once you have the ticket open for booking, it's usually gets snapped up within like even less than an hour, like most tickets will be, and you can't pre-book in advance, way in advance also. So I think there's like a window that you have to get before your departure date.
So they get dropped like Supreme products, basically.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, or you walk or you take a bus,
Mm.
right? The only private legal options that we can think of are personal cars, licensed tour buses. That means there are some tour buses that have the licenses to cross. For usually they go on tour groups and things like that.
Yeah, and you have to go to a designated spot and get picked up lah.
They would be the express buses that bring you to like further afield. Like it could be as near as Johor or the airport in Skudai or Senai, and then you can go to like Malacca or KL or Ipoh or something like that on the bus, or you have to take a specific causeway taxi. The rules are also determined based on there are a few considerations when the rules are there. The first is you have to make sure that everybody is licensed, because you don't want a random driver who has no
right to
no background checks to be driving you. You don't want to have someone bring you somewhere you don't want to be. That's the first thing. The second thing is obviously insurance, cause accidents and things do happen. So you need to be covered on the risk side of things. And then it's also, I think, a question of fairness, right? You don't want to have too many taxis from one side serving, or and therefore the current rule is that 200 Singaporean taxis and 200 Malaysian taxis are allowed at any point in time to be licensed. That means only Singapore can only provide 200 taxis, Malaysia can only provide 200 taxis. Although this quota is not filled up at the moment.
But these taxis are what? They are different companies than the taxi companies that we have, or
some of them you may have seen before. They are like the yellow color taxis. Okay, at Queen Street, at Bansan Street. Some of them are actually comfort taxis. Yeah. If you see that,
but they have special licenses.
They have the license to cross. And the total number of taxis is about 300. So of the total number of 400 allowed, only 300 odd are taken up. Right? And then the rule is that taxis must start and end at Bansan Street, brackets, Queen Street in Singapore, near the Bugis Junction area.
Yep.
And then in Johor, they must end at Larkin Sentral. So that's where the train and bus terminal is.
So like designated pick-off drop-off points, like you can't like midway and then you say that, can you pick me up at my place?
I mean, you can't go to like Paradigm Mall and this directly on these taxis. Yeah. And then so basically I don't really take all these public transportation options because I tend to only go when I have the luxury to drive over.
Yeah.
But for someone who doesn't own a car, what do you feel about like the ways that we get across?
Okay, for me it's because I usually try to cross or try to go with friends during like I don't work the usual time that usually people work. So I have like my days off on Monday. So I'm able to go in on certain Mondays that there's less people who are crossing the border. I can choose a period that's not too peak. But but there's still a hassle of like having to get to Woodlands, then get a bus. It's not like I can just get out of my front door and then decide, okay, I want to go in. So that usually kind of like it causes that inertia there to cross the border lah, in a sense that like I can't just go today and say that, okay, I just want to go, but you have to like really plan and make that trip.
Yes, as when you say inertia, right? The first thing I thought of is like there's the reason why I don't cross over when I don't have a car is because there's so much friction. When you say the word inertia, I think of the word friction.
Yeah.
I think that there's like too much in the way to get across.
I did had option of like being able to cross, but it was not really a particularly legal kind of option lah. It is more like through like privately arranged transport. So they have like I think from Malaysia side, then they have like people who like come in and pick you up. Then you just go down to your house. Then they pick everybody who needs to cross. Then they will just go in
Okay.
to the.
Then, but why
to
don't
Malaysia.
why don't you? Why has it not come across? Like, why has it not occurred to you that you could just go to the taxi stand in Bugis to take a taxi across?
Okay, the problem is that
Did it even come across your mind?
not really.
Because it doesn't come.
Yeah,
it doesn't even occur to
it's
me
not
that
intuitive to me. Like, okay, you can get a cab over.
yes, I always thought that there are buses there, but
Yeah.
I rarely think of taxis that go across.
Yeah,
from
and
there.
even when we said that it was not legal to cross, I didn't even know that it was not legal until this whole debacle came about.
Yeah,
Strictly.
this thing only kind of people only started to get aware. People like me started to get aware of it only because it blew up in the news.
Yeah, for me, I thought it was like, okay, it was just like, okay, Malaysian drivers come and pick you up and you just make arrangements through like, they have a business number or something like that. Then, because I wasn't the one who made the arrangement. It was friends who were like, okay, let's plan to go. Then they,
It's like private calling cards.
yeah
lah.
lah, correct.
Because I have heard of friends who like relatives who just call a Toyota Alphard in,
Yeah,
pick
exactly
them up,
those type.
pick them up at 4 o'clock to play golf, something like
Mm.
that. Because I can imagine if you are a golfist and you want to play golf in Malaysia on a weekend, if you don't have a car, having to carry a golf bag across the border, it's quite painful.
Yeah, and then there's the convenience of like, especially if I also can understand from certain people's point of view, if let's say you want to bring a family of like 3 or 4 across the border, like during the weekend or something like that, you just want to make a short trip with kids in tow, it's a bit difficult to like, take the bus. Not saying that it's impossible. I mean, I've done it with friends, but there is it adds on to that hassle of
It's less comfortable for
yeah,
sure.
correct. So I think that's why that the private hire way seemed to be quite preferred, and a lot of people did use it until it was like clamped down, and then it after this whole the whole media kind of started to cover it, then then these services died down. Then it kind of like deprived people for more with this option lah.
I mean, yes, I get it because like ultimately people want to be as comfortable as they can when they go on even on a day trip.
Yeah.
It's an event, so to speak, when you are going to JB. It's not like going from Tampines to Jurong West for the day. It is still the idea of just merely the idea of crossing a border makes it an event. And people want to be comfortable, right? It is possible. I mean, it's possible to push a stroller. If you have 1 or 2 kids, push a stroller, take a bus, cross the border. You just need to scan some stuff, but you have to queue. The problem is you have to queue. You got to move from vehicle out of the vehicle, out of the vehicle, get your passport stamped. There's a lot of all these extra steps, and it's very uncomfortable. Whereas if, as compared to if you had a vehicle, legal or otherwise, you had a vehicle, you just sit in there, and then although it may be a hour-long queue, you are still set inside a box that is air conditioned, and you'll be just driven across.
And some of the private hire vehicles are actually quite well equipped. Because my experience from that was that there was like the vehicles they had like a karaoke inside the Alphard one. So it's like you can even just like relax, you can watch your shows and stuff like that.
Or if you got kids, I can imagine they can
Yeah.
play the most the most attention grabbing nonsense on the
Netflix
TV
or something
screen.
like that, yeah.
Which I think it's quite important to some parents who want to have a quieter trip, and I think it has blown up. The blowing up part, I think from the PHV industry side of things, um, people are unhappy because I think there is some movement in the Malaysian drivers who come in. If I think many people will not be, there are two levels to it. Many people will not be begrudging Malaysian cars coming to Singapore to pick you up to go to JB. I think because it has happened for so long, right?
Yeah, it's
So
like it has been like in the background and
for years, right? For decades. I think it's been there for like a decade or so or more. And I think people aren't so begrudging of that because Singaporean services don't cross the border anyway. There aren't as many of these services all along. And therefore, I don't think local private hire drivers would normally see these guys in the past as
it's
competition.
competition, yeah.
So the thing is that a lot of the accusations right now are happening because a lot of alphas come into Singapore for a day, but they don't just merely drop off their passengers in Singapore and then go back.
Okay.
All right.
So what else do
The
they
accusations that are flying around now are that the private vehicles come into Singapore for a commercial reason. They may have taken a tourist that's flown in to Malaysia first. They fly into Malaysia first. They probably started their journey they could start their journey in JB, they could start their journey in KL, but they come into Singapore, they do a day trip, and their entire day trip is being chauffeured by a Malaysian driver with a Malaysian vehicle.
Right. So we don't get to see that tourist dollar in that sense.
The tourist dollar goes to the Malaysian vehicle.
Yep.
So if you're a local driver, the thing that's competing against you is basically a driver from another country, right? If that vehicle didn't have the business of ferrying a customer around Singapore from say Bugis to Sentosa, Gardens by the Bay and Zoo and all that kind of thing, if that customer didn't have that vehicle from Malaysia doing that, they would have been taking Grab rides or taxi rides in Singapore. Money would have gone to fares for local drivers.
Yes.
All right. Now, that is, for a start, there is a level of protectionism in there because ultimately people want to keep their livelihood as much as possible. There's competition, right?
Which I guess is also necessary because as a Singaporean, you would want the tourist dollar to flow into our economy.
Yeah, that's what you would want if
Yeah.
you are based here.
Yeah.
And it's not as if you could legally go across the border and do the same business.
Yeah.
Right? It's not as if you if a Grab driver in Singapore,
Because
you can just drive and do. It's a geographically limited service.
Yeah, and it's also economically more viable if you are from Malaysia to operate a Malaysian car and to come into Singapore.
Yes. There's actually a huge disparity in cost between a Malaysian driven and Malaysian owned vehicle versus a Singaporean vehicle.
Yeah.
All right, just some examples of cost, right? An Alphard. So we're talking about a big
It's a
limo type
seven-seater
type
yeah.
car, a big limo type car, right? In Malaysia, it would cost 538,000 ringgit. Okay, the currency exchange rate is about 3.2 to 3.3 ringgit to $1 right now, right? So this vehicle will cost about 180,000 Sing dollars in Malaysia, okay, or less, 170,000, 180,000 Sing dollars in Malaysia. It costs 317,000 in Singapore, depending on the specification level you have.
So that's almost like
double or more
yeah.
in Singapore for
then
that
the fuel, the upkeep.
Yeah, so the fuel, right? Just because the operating cost, the other operating cost is fuel, right? So if a Malaysian driver pumps petrol in Malaysia and then drives to Singapore for a day to operate, they would be paying $2 ringgit 60 a liter on average. Okay. This price also factors in a subsidy from the Malaysian government on RON 95 fuel. So, okay, because Singaporean cars, when they go to Malaysia, they do not have the access to pump 95. They have to pump the more expensive grade
Yeah.
because it's not subsidized. So the Malaysian cars pay 260 ringgit a liter, which is about 80 cents a liter, Singapore 80 cents a liter, right? In Singapore, a car, depending on the discount level that you get, you are basically paying $2 to about $2 to 288 per liter of RON 95 as of around October 2025. Okay, so you are paying more than double the price of petrol to operate your Alphard. So basically, the cost disparity is already so huge, it makes competition even harder for a Singaporean driver with a Singaporean car.
Yep. So it doesn't actually even make sense to be based here in Singapore and offer day trips to Malaysia.
Yeah, that's one. And also, there should be because there is a national border, geographic border that exists between Malaysia and Singapore. By most people will argue, and I tend to agree with them, that you should geographically restrict the business, unless so that there is some level of quota, there's some level of controls between the two territories.
Yep.
Right, and therefore, like, cars in Singapore, for a start, on the cost front, already suffer in terms of cost when competing against like for like products and services
To a Malaysian counterpart.
to a Malaysian counterpart.
Of course, it is kind of known in a sense that we get the shorter end of the stick because of our geographical size, due to how we need to restrict the number of cars on the road, therefore COE, therefore cost of the car. But at the same time, if we restrict this so-called like competition from cross the border, but it also limits options for locals like us who may not drive.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the thing is that if let's say the people who they invested significant sums of their money and their resources into running a business to provide transportation services in Singapore, then it's understandable to some degree why. I mean, I do not excuse that behavior, some of the more extreme behavior. At the very least, it can explain why there are so many confrontations and so much animosity between Singaporean private hire drivers
And Malaysian private
against the Malaysian private hire drivers. And it has come to a point where, because the Singaporean drivers have lobbied the government to take action, because ultimately there are licensing concerns, there are insurance concerns, and the government has to take action based on these matters of public interest. There have been many clampdowns that happen, operations that happen, and a lot of these Malaysian drivers ended up losing their vehicles completely because the government confiscated their vehicles, and but under the law they have the right to totally remove the vehicles from the drivers, meaning the drivers will never see their vehicle again. And understandably, the Malaysian side, the Southern Private Hire Vehicle Association, on 6th of October, they wrote a post to urge the Malaysian authorities to basically ban all private hire vehicles from Singapore to enter Malaysia totally. Right? I think it's
it's like a tit for tat in that sense.
But the thing is that, like, yes, because when we allow Malaysian vehicles in, to be fair, if an Alphard came to Singapore, if the owner of the vehicle brought his own family in, there's nothing that is wrong with that. It's above board. Right? Of course, then it comes a whole investigation of whether this person that's a passenger is ultimately the family of this guy, and yada yada yada. And the same issue will happen again when Singaporean vehicles go into Malaysia, right? And then, so therefore, like, that association in Southern Malaysia is basically lobbying their government to say that just outright ban all these vehicles from coming in at all.
Yeah, just like nipped it in the butt and just like, no.
Yes, and that animosity has got to a point where there are people who have said that their cars get scratched up when they are in Malaysia. So they drive into Malaysia for like a supper, because on a weekday night, traffic is quieter, you can go in for a quick supper. Some people have gone in and they had their cars damaged just because they are labeled as a private hire car. Yeah.
Right.
So is what is not nice and not good for everybody is that there's this level of animosity that is happening. I feel that there needs to be some action taken in terms of solving
Some
this
form of
problem.
de-escalation and then
Well, the de-escalation can only happen if there is a
solution.
solution to the problem, right?
Yep.
And we also haven't even looked at the part where there are some people who actually require and are willing to pay a higher rate for an executive type of transport across the border.
And there's actually even though we say that there's a legal solution, which is the taxis, but the taxis are only like 4-door saloon cars max, right? There are
They're
no
just normal
seven-seated.
taxis.
Yeah.
There are still people who would want a business class type experience when they
Yeah.
cross. And with the Singapore Johor Special Economic Zone coming up, there's more economic activity between the two areas.
Mhm.
And a crucial part of this economic zone is that people can get across the border. There's a level of ease of movement
Yep.
so that people can go in and do their business.
But would you also say that could it be that we are kicking the can down the road because of the upcoming RTS, where it may not be as big of an issue as we think of it to be, because once the RTS is there, then like maybe this thing will go away on its own. That could be one of the way that the both sides are looking at it in that sense.
I mean, at this current point, it is only conjecture as to how the road traffic on the causeway will change once
With the RTS.
with the new rapid transmit system happening, right? It is only conjecture as to what will happen when it is complete. The assumption that many have made is that the people who are on buses that are directly Johor Bahru Singapore buses will not take the buses anymore, right? But I feel that there are still people who would probably still want to take the bus, because Larkin is accessible to certain areas in town. And then it may be a cost issue as well, and also it is. Let's not forget, trains do break down. Not on anybody's. Not that it's the fault of anybody. It's just the nature of things, right? A bus will break down, a train will break down. Things will, and there needs to be a certain level of redundancy, and we still don't know what the impact will be in terms of vehicular traffic. Yeah.
But the RTS is built with easing the congestion in mind lah.
However, I put this hypothetical scenario, which I think to some people will not be hypothetical when it comes to their daily lives. You have a business that is, let's say, corporate office is in Singapore, but let's say you have a plant and facility in Johor Bahru or in Johor,
which is quite common in Singapore.
Right, very common, right? And you have a client or a potential big customer flying to Singapore to visit you.
Yep. And it's more preferred because
because your corporate office is here.
Yeah, and
right?
the aviation, we are an aviation hub.
Yeah, the transportation hub is here. So your corporate client flies in from some other region into Singapore, and you, as part of their visit, you show them your facilities in Malaysia. Now you tell them that there's a border crossing. It's going to be a little long to wait, but I will get you there as comfortable a manner as possible. At this point in time, the only sort of legal way you can do that is if you are that business owner and you happen to have a nice car to drive them across.
Yeah.
All right. You have no other.
There's no other executive service that will.
Yeah, except for maybe a very small number of tour companies that have like tourist
like
vans,
limo, and stuff like
the vans,
that.
the tourist vans that have the licenses across the border.
Yeah.
And that will be one of very, very, very few people who can do that service for you. Then how are we going to get across? If you don't even have a car, how are you going to get across? It's not very nice as a business doing sales to bring your customer to a public bus or a semi-public bus to
it's
go
not
across.
A good look lah.
Yeah, and then you have to, and not forgetting, if you take a bus, you got to get to the terminal, take out your bags, scan your bags, get your passport stamped on both sides. It's actually very, very high friction. It's still not a good environment to bring your client across, right?
Yeah, especially if it's just more of like a visit to the thing. It's supposed to be a 2 hour
Yes,
max
and-
thing, then
and-
it gets stretched to 4 because of the border crossing.
Exactly, and it is still a long trip because it is the nature of it.
Yeah.
And it's understandable if you were a client. But at the very least, you put them into a vehicle that is very comfortable and they can sit and talk
Yeah.
during that duration as compared to public transportation.
Yep.
And this is what the Southern Private Hire Association was saying when they say that like you cannot just stop us from business because you're depriving businesses of a comfortable experience across the border.
And I think from a regular Heartlander perspective is also that even though, yes, I may not need the executive option all the time, but it's good to know that there is an option out there. Because right now it seems as though, I have to get down to Queen Street, I have to get a driver, and then is
In
it
a
a fixed price or is it
There's a fixed price, okay?
Yeah.
Regardless of the price, it's
Yeah.
still the vehicle selection is not very big also.
Yeah, so if let's say I stay in somewhere in the north, it actually makes more sense for me to just go straight across the border. I have to detour down and then go back up north again.
Yes, for your birthday trip, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe is your birthday trip or like some anniversary trip for some parents or for your
Like it's a
for your
holiday
partner.
trip getaway with kids and stuff like that. Yeah, then instead of going from north, then just straight up, I have to go down to like central side of Singapore, then go back up again. Which a part of it seems to not really make sense.
Yes, and it's a very time consuming thing
Yeah.
when you are doing something for a special occasion.
And especially if let's say you're traveling on an off day, you don't want to spend the majority of the trip should be about the trip itself and instead of getting to the destination.
Exactly. You want to spend more time on your
Which is-
at the massage
yeah.
than at the checkpoint.
And to eat my seafood and whatever lah.
Yes.
So it kind of seems as though that there is legitimately a demand in the market. There's a hole in that sense that seems to have been plugged, but then due to certain disputes and due to all these like
Compliance issues.
bickering between different counterparts from Singapore and from Malaysia, then it seems as though also that consumers, everyday consumers like us, seems to we have lost out on an option that was
Yes.
always been there.
And here's the thing. Technology to solve this problem, I think we can more or less agree that the technological solutions for this are there already.
Yeah, I
You
mean
can-
we have used Grab, Gojek,
Uber, all
Uber,
these
all
things.
this has been here for at least a decade.
Yes, so the restrictions are not exactly on the technology front.
Yeah,
There is
you can match a driver to a customer anytime.
yes, there's actually a Malaysian app, right, that says that they're offering
Cross-border.
the legal license taxi across.
Mm.
So it's not exactly a technology problem, but the thing is, what happened was the Singaporean side and the Malaysian side, the authorities did not confirm if this was a legitimate way to get your taxi across the border. So it points at two things, right? Technology is there, right? Problem is then the real problem is the regulatory environment is not there. And who runs the regulatory environment? It's the governments on both sides of the border, right?
Yeah.
And what to me is actually very annoying is that we actually hear very little from governments of both sides of the border.
And especially with we say that there's a special economic zone that's coming up, then more so that we should be providing these
Exactly, because
services,
frankly
right?
speaking, the special economic zone, right, for laymen, right, it's a very abstract concept.
Yeah.
For people who are in the commercial sphere, they would see this as an opportunity. But for laymen who are not in commerce, they don't really understand what a special economic zone is. Like I'm going to put it to you this way. Shenzhen was a special economic zone. But what does it mean to you as a layman when you talk about Shenzhen as a special economic zone?
The only thing I know is like, okay, it's a
It's
hub for technology nowadays.
yeah, you see it just as a big city, but as in terms of as a normal person, you don't really understand what special economic zone really is, because it's a thing
how does it benefit the everyday man?
because it's something that is mainly driven by the government and adopted by people in business,
Yeah.
right? But for normal people, what we only see is, oh, how do I get across? I just want to get across as comfortably as possible. Oh, you say that there's an economic zone. I want to do business. I want to give my business. I want to get there as easily and as quickly and comfortably as possible.
Then would you also say that it could be a messaging thing, that it seems as though there could be certain legitimate ways, but it is firstly also not communicated well enough that people don't know, or that there are options out there, but it is not well advertised, it is not well publicized, or things like that?
Well, the options that are not publicized or advertised properly, for a start, the taxi quota is still not filled up.
Yeah.
The legal taxi quota is 400, but there's only 300 taxis. There are so many taxis who complain that they barely get 1 or 2 trips a day. I mean, it's actually quite tough. Can you imagine sitting there in your car, right, with your engine turned off?
And especially if, let's say, you're Malaysian, you come here all the way to Queen Street waiting for people to go back up.
Yeah.
And then there's nobody who takes.
There's no business, right?
Yeah.
Then there's no point in running a business where there's no customers,
yeah.
right? So,
or people like the day-to-day Singaporeans don't even know that there's a legitimate.
Yeah, so there's a huge gap, right? There's a huge missing gap in terms of people want to go across comfortably, but somehow these people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that these services are available, or they rather not take these services
because of geographical area, where they're
or whatever
situated,
other reason there is, right?
Or could there be another point where certain points in Singapore where the west will be served by another area to go, even though yes, we are not very big geographically, but convenience is still the name of the game.
True. And furthermore, these rules were set at the time, especially for Singapore, right? These rules were set at a time when, from a very, very long time ago.
Yeah.
And those days we had a very different setup in our island. Remember back in the day we had park and ride, where you drive your car to an MRT station and then you could take a cheap, like you pay for cheap parking and take an MRT into town to work. Now we are so decentralized, so much more decentralized as an island, that people actually they may actually start their journey from work to another workplace they start a workplace in Singapore to go to Johor for further work. They may not actually start in the CBD area. In the past, you go from Raffles Place or Chinatown to Bugis and you take a taxi across. Yeah. Now you're probably going from Changi Business Park or from like Jurong to go into Bugis to take a train to take a taxi to Johor. I don't think that makes sense. Also, the regulations and the compliance requirements have not caught up with the nature.
Yeah,
they're not caught up with the nature and the times of what things are happening right now.
There is legitimate concerns because it is still the most busy land crossing in the world, and if we can let's say we can make it easier for people who are going there for leisure, a better option, it could also kind of indirectly ease up the bus commute, because let's say I want to do a day trip. If I know that there's another option, I don't take the bus, then the bus gets freed up for people who are doing their work trip, who want that cheaper option, or because they travel day to day, they are not going to pay executive prices every single time they cross the border, right? So then and let's say even if the RTS do come in, and if I have the executive option, I take the executive option, the easier, the more comfortable option. Then it frees up that slot in the RTS for people who really need it for their daily commute purposes. And that could actually be a multi-pronged approach in terms of like easing this whole border congestion thing. I think previously we also did kind of thought that having a second link will kind of ease up some, but it seems as though it has not really, nobody had really, not saying that the second link is
it's useful.
It's useful, but
it's useful for another reason.
Yeah.
It's useful for you to go to either the industrial areas of Western Johor, or if you're going further up north, it's a more convenient way to go further up north actually.
But because most of the economic activity within Johor is still where
The causeway is.
the causeway is, so it still has to be there.
Yes, and because of the special economic zone idea, many businesses in Singapore are snapping up commercial properties, offices in the JB area.
The last trip I went there, I even see like, there's more like hospitality is really gearing up for that thing, because I think a lot of hospitality places they know that it is time to refurbish their setup. Legitimately also is that the Johorians do kind of welcome our businesses because it is a legitimate way for them. It is a very vital part of the economy, because we have seen it during COVID that they do want the Singapore business. They are gearing up, and if we provide even more options for Singaporeans to go, easier options, more comfortable options, then I think it's a win-win for both sides, isn't it?
Yeah, we just want more activity for everybody, so that when what we have seen, especially post pandemic, many people have seen that what really helps everybody's livelihoods is when there's more activity going around.
Yeah, because we do have a symbiotic relationship with Johor. I would say it could even outweigh how our relationship with KL is, because there is so many people that we know that, like in secondary school, we know of friends who come down daily to study in Singapore.
Yes, we have friends. I have friends who commuted they commuted as students in the early days as primary school kids, all the way till now they're coming in as working professionals.
Yeah, so there is a symbiotic relationship between these two areas, and then why are we then restricting how we can move people between these two land masses? I would even go on to say that it seems as though some of these ways that we have been looking at the problem seems to be quite archaic, where we should be looking at it with fresh eyes and try to find a win-win for everybody.
Yes. I mean, the solutions that we have right now may be archaic. It's getting very ugly in some situations, where recently there was a video that just came out. A Malaysian Alphard was at Gardens by the Bay, and there was this video, right, of this Singaporean who went up to the guy and started to confront this driver, say that, hey, is this your family? Are these your friends? And there's this.
Okay, these kind of things
these are very ugly
uncalled
things.
for. Yeah,
these are very ugly things, and at the same time, this situation can, if you take one step back, this situation could have not happened if there is a structure that supports what the customer wants, alongside get this driver to become licensed, and he pays the necessary fees, right, to provide the service. Then you can really go after people who are out to just cut the rules, right? Because yes, there is a cost difference. Perhaps the regulators can institute some form of fees to alleviate the price differences, so that people don't see this as a way to game the cost differences.
I think ultimately, as Singaporeans, or even if we have people on the other side, is that I think we both want a win-win.
There's a level of fairness that is lacking here.
Correct. As consumer, we want that option. As regulators, you want people to be safe. You want people to be at ease with whatever that's there. And if you are a private hire driver, you also want to be able to, do your business in peace lah. That, like, you don't want people to come up to you at Gardens by the Bay and you get.
Neither do you want to go across to Malaysia and have your car scratched up.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just not a very good space to be in at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully the regulators and governments on both sides will kind of make a stance soon, and then we can have a win-win.
I would say that perhaps one way to resolve this issue is really to have a sort of licensing regime where the cost disparities, that sort of arbitrage, right? Because there is a cost arbitrage involved here.
Yep.
If you could alleviate that cost arbitrage through some sort of licensing regime,
or you factor it in that.
Yeah, if you like the licensing, maybe the license has a fee that can counter the effects of cost arbitrage. and makes it a fairer environment for all service providers. Maybe that's one way to look at it. That's one way to solve that problem, right? And ultimately, it also requires our government on Singapore side and the government on the Malaysian side to have a friendly relationship to really talk it out, right? Because that confrontation on the streets, it should just really end where it should just end at the streets where they are at, and not go further. Because you don't want also our regulators to be throwing things at each other across the table.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's some sort of solution, a licensing regime of some sort to make this problem a solved problem, or have at least a more comfortable way to do it. So hopefully someone will also consider our suggestion, because that is really, I mean, before talking about this, I really just thought that it's just take the car, lor. I never really thought that just take a bus or take a car.
Yeah, like even before you even floated to me, or even before the news report came out, I also didn't know that it was not a legitimate option. Like as in the car thing, the private hire was, I thought it was like everything was above board until
it blew up. So that's one of the things you learned today, but that's not suitable for the applications of our ending segment of every show.
Yeah.
So what did you learn today or recently?
So what have I learned? It was something that I think it kind of close to my heart. Okay, I won't say my heart,
looking at your notes here, right?
Yeah.
Is this the Bloodhound Gang song, right? Foxtrot uniform Charlie Kilo. With the banana vehicle going through a tunnel.
Okay, not in that sense, but today I learned about how the NATO phonetic alphabet came about, because to me, this is very close because I had to use this daily when I was in national service. Because I'm a signaller by training.
So signaller only use flags.
Yeah. So the NATO phonetic alphabet is like part of what you need to memorize. I remember during the course you had to you have to really memorize your A to Z's with the NATO phonetic alphabet. Then I think it popped up on my feed by I think it's a linguistic guy. I'll link that show into the show notes, but he went about to explain like how we actually came about to like the NATO phonetic alphabet. For those who are not in the know, the NATO phonetic alphabet basically goes like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, yada yada yada. So like how did it come about? If you don't really use radio communications, it's you kind of not really known that it exists. But why it started to have we have this phonetic alphabet is because I think early days when radio was the norm, and it was like starting to become widely adopted for aviation and military use, especially I think before World War II. So the radios are not very good quality.
Is it because they cut down the frequencies that are transmitted at any point in time?
So the bandwidth is actually very little.
The high pitch stuff is gone and the bottom pitch stuff is
I think if I'm not wrong, anything above 7 kilohertz. So your vocal speaking, the human hearing goes from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So like anything above 7 kilohertz onwards, so like the whole top end is like gone. And then your bottom end is like also gone. So it's like you don't have.
That's how you get the telephone sound. The walkie-talkie sound.
Yeah, the walkie-talkie sound and then all this kind of thing. So a lot of these words, especially if you need to spell certain things out, like certain words like B and D, if it sounds similar in terms of how it's being pronounced, or especially if you don't speak English, then that's when it starts to be confused, right? So during World War II, we started knowing that is actually a problem, because not everybody who is fighting alongside you and uses the radio is an English speaker, right? So even though, yes, majority are English speaking, like the Americans and the Brits, they speak English, but even then, because of cultural norms, how we would tell a person it is A, like A for apple, but to another person, it may not be A, like
Z and E, right? As I said earlier. So if a British person says
Z, and
then
Z,
the American may catch the Z, but they may also have thought that they may say when the British person says E, they would have thought they may have heard Z,
Z,
on the
yeah.
other
So
side.
there are all these things. So I think after World War II and after how NATO came about, like, so in NATO, there's like the Spanish are there, the French are there, the West Germans are there. So everybody else who has a different language spoken, you start to have all these differences. You start to have this problem of how do you then communicate language or alphabet, right? So the ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization, decided that, okay, because we're gonna fly all over the world and like all the pilots need to talk to the towers, you need to have a standard way to be able to communicate over radio. So then they decided to develop a phonetic alphabet so that it is easier to pronounce, it is distinct, and it's familiar to everybody who is using it. Meaning it has to cross cultural norms, cultural lines. So it's like if I'm a French or I'm a Spanish speaker, it has to match up with someone who is speaking English. So then that's why they started having this first version in 1951, which it started with Alpha Bravo Coca. They used that Coca because Coca-Cola was like a drink that started to be very, very prevalent worldwide. So therefore they use Coca and Delta. But then if you actually, we will insert the video link lah. So if you watch the whole video, they actually explain that because of the first version, even though it's like most speakers still kind of get it, but there's still
Coca can still be spelled as K-O-K-A,
yeah,
right?
it could still mean K, it could still mean certain things. Then I think if I'm not wrong, at that time X was extra. So then
It's kind of like E.
yeah, it's actually E. So it's like it's a bit weird. So then after that, it evolved to the final version, which was what we use today, which is the Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta thing. And
The
then
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot type thing.
yeah, so then it was then finalized in 1956, and then it was adopted jointly by NATO, then the ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization, and also the International Telecommunications Union. So it's like then this becomes so widely used that it's used in militaries, it's used by pilots and air traffic control ATC, it's used by emergency services, and it's also used by, if you are a ham radio enthusiast, you will also use it. And I think sometimes even in our civilian day-to-day, we would use it to spell out how, like, let's say you have to talk to a bank over the phone about like
When you're booking you're doing your hotel booking or your airline
then
booking.
there's like all the alphanumeric stuff, then yeah, you start to use it. And it was really quite interesting to see, like, wow, you have to design something that transcends language and culture, and then how it then becomes like something that could truly be used universally. And that was what was interesting, and that's what I learned.
Interesting. Okay, the roots of it, I mean, the purposes to me have always been quite obvious. It's just that the source of it is quite new. Yeah, I can't think of it, but the whole idea is quite modern because radio itself is quite modern, right?
Yeah, it's a late 18th century, 19th century thing.
Yeah, that's also the reason why signalers, the traditional emblem for signalers is flags.
Yeah, because
in the past,
on the battlefield, you use flags instead of radios. Yeah.
Yeah. So something that I learned recently, right? So do you notice, this is in the cycling sphere now,
Mm-hmm.
do you know why the most famous cycling jersey in the world is the yellow jersey? The Tour de France leader of the race wears yellow. However, can you guess why the jerseys are of that color?
Okay, I know why Tour de France is yellow, because Tour de France was started by the paper, and the paper was printed on yellow paper. That's why it's yellow. But I don't know why is it.
Yes, so because the full history of the tour is that back in the day there was no television, right? So sport is viewed in the stadium. You sit in the stadium, you watch people run around the track, or you watch the football being played and all that. However, cycling isn't exactly a sport that you can watch because you can only stand on the side of the road and see the cyclist zoom past.
Yeah.
You can't exactly watch all 100 kilometers for the day. Because there was no such thing as TV back in those days, right? It's the idea of the newspaper. So the idea was, I'm going to have a spot, right, where the winner of the day, right, is announced on my newspaper the next day. So Tuesday stage finish. So I will
Wednesday's
write.
morning paper will
Yeah,
tell you.
so I will write the story on the Tuesday night and publish it by Wednesday morning. The people can read and they say, oh, this guy has won the yellow jersey for yesterday and he has been leading the pack, and then he can see. So every day is like chasing the next story, right? And that's how they use it to sell newspapers. Okay, this is like really, really long ago when there's no newspapers. So the Lotto, which was the newspaper that founded the race, was printed on yellow paper. So therefore, the
Tour de France,
Tour de France
winner
jersey is
wears yellow.
yes, exactly. If you're unfamiliar with colored newspapers, right, the most commonly seen one is the
Financial
Times. Yeah, the Financial Times is printed on like a pinkish paper,
Yeah.
right? So that is how newspapers in some countries look like. So, so this idea was the biggest in France. Then it caught on in other tours. So, in Italy, right, the pink jersey is because their newspaper is printed in pink paper. La Gazzetta dello Sport is printed in pink paper. Another weird jersey color that I can talk about is the black jersey. So the black jersey used to be for the racer that was the last in the classification.
Oh.
Yeah.
But now I don't remember them having.
Yes, because it became a problem. Because at first, the people who designed the black jersey thought it was like a shameful type of thing to have to
like
wear.
wooden spoon kind of thing.
Yes. However, it became a competition in its own right. So there were people who reverse raced to end up with the black jersey because it's
still a jersey.
Because you have to meet the cut yet not be last. So the black jersey is still one that people go after when it was still in existence. So thanks for listening to us on this episode of Also Consider This. This is Act 5. So just an update. I have updated our podcast. It is not just only available on Spotify and YouTube. It is also now available on more podcast platforms like Overcast, on Pocket Casts, and also importantly, Amazon Casts or Amazon Music, as well as Apple Podcasts.
So you can always find us on all these platforms.
If you will do us the gracious favor of introducing us to somebody else or sharing an episode of this podcast with a friend, then there are more platforms for them to listen to us from. And of course, we will share more snippets of our next few episodes as we publish them on IG and things like that.
Yep. So we are out every
Monday.
So
Monday
you
morning.
can always listen to us on your Monday morning commute or throughout your weekly commute time.
Yes. Or
And
even
then-
in the office lah. Just, listening to us is better than listening to your boss drone on about their amazing weekend.
Yeah, so hopefully you give us a like, a share, a subscribe. If you are discovered us for the first time, if you have only this is your first episode, there's past episodes. So feel free to listen.
Thank you for all the time that you spent with us, and also listen to us again next week. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. See you.
Okay, thanks, bye.
Bye.